But can you tell me who you are and maybe how, like, what you do for work and how you got into that to start?
Mhm. So my name's Rhiannon, and I own a business called Life and Soul, and I offer modern alternatives to traditional funerals. That sounds like an easy way of putting it, but it's not because it's quite broad. So I organise memorials. Ultimately, is what I do. So I don't deal with the final disposition as a funeral director would. Would you say funeral director in the US?
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the heart of what I do is storytelling. It is telling someone's story, whether that be as a living funeral, so while the person's still alive and they want to go to their final hurrah, which I think is awesome. It's not for everybody. You really have to enjoy being the center of attention,
Hmm.
to want to opt into a living funeral. And then also, I really encourage people to have memorials perhaps at a later date that's separate from a traditional funeral. There really is a place in the world for funeral directors. And I always hope that when I'm talking about what I do, I'm not bashing funeral directors. That's not my
Hmm.
intention at all. They are brilliant at what they do, they care for our loved ones after they've gone. And majority of funeral directors that I've spoken to or come across, they really do care about what they do. Um, I'm just an option, and I offer something that can happen at a later date that is entirely centered around the person. There isn't a format, which I find it was kind of what you were touching on at the beginning. A traditional, I would say, a bit bland format sometimes. I think we've all
Hmm.
been to a carbon copy of a funeral at some point in our lives, and I'm sad to say that my dad's was very much like that, and as beautiful as it was in lots of ways, I definitely left thinking afterwards, like, "Oh God, was that it?" Like,
Yeah.
that was it. That was the final bit of this. I mean, it wasn't the end of the journey, as you well know. Like, the grief continues for a long time, but it was my mum's. When my mum passed away, so I've lost both my parents, and that's how I got
Mm-hmm.
into this work. I think, like a lot of people, is when you experience a loss, it really makes you think differently about lots of things, and
Hmm.
funerals was definitely something that after my mum's I just kept thinking about. So for my mum's, she said, get rid of me in the cheapest way possible. So we did a direct cremation. Is that something you have in the States, direct cremation, or would you call it something different?
I think we would call it just cremation. Is it different than, is direct different
Yeah,
than,
so I have found that. So my dad passed away 10 years ago, which is a milestone I'm really struggling with at the moment because
I can
10 years
imagine,
just
yeah.
feels crazy.
Yeah, the time
Um,
goes by so fast.
so fast. And so he died just before his 60th birthday, and it was really sudden. And he'd planned his 60th birthday, which it was a bit of a PS I love you. We still
Mm.
went and did the trip that he planned for his 60th birthday. So he would have been 70 in May. And so we're planning a trip then.
Oh, that's
Um,
nice.
yeah, it's yeah, just to sort of echo what we did for a 60th. Only my mum's not here now to enjoy that too.
Mm.
So I think I was going to talk about direct cremations. So 10 years ago when dad died, it was just burial or a cremation, which I imagine is the same, so anyone can attend or anyone you want to put on your guest list. But when mum passed away, we were offered a burial, a cremation as we know it, and a direct cremation, where at the time they just cremated her. So once they came and picked her up from home and took her away, that was kind of the last time we saw her, and the next time we had her, she was in ashes.
Okay.
And nobody attends that. So they do direct cremations in the morning before they have days of normal cremations and services. But since then, so that was 4 years ago, mum passed away. They offer two, or I think three different kinds of direct cremations. So the
Mm.
one that we did where nobody attended, they now do one where it is just super, super simple, immediate family only. We're talking like 10 people, just so that you can be there, touch the coffin as it goes off, and just be in the vicinity whilst the person's being cremated. And then there's like a next tier up where you can have slightly more people, so 35 people,
Okay.
for example. So that's kind of in that 10-year span. That's why I got onto talking about my dad's 10-year anniversary. I digressed. Is because so much has changed in that 10 years.
Mhm.
And it's only evident when you unfortunately are experiencing another loss and you're having to go through that process again. So when mum said get rid of me in the cheapest way possible, that was the direct cremation where you didn't attend at the time, and that was about £1,500 at the time. And she said, I then want you to go off and dance. And I don't really know if she said that because that was something that she truly wanted. It was definitely reflective of her because that woman loved to dance. She loved a good time, and she's the reason why I called my business Life and Soul, because she was the life and soul of the party.
Mm.
And that's what we did. We had a party, and we did it later. So it was about 6 weeks after she passed away. Whereas I feel funerals here is very much try and get it done 4 weeks after they've passed away, depending on the circumstances. If, like my dad, he had to go to the coroner because it was a sudden death, that prolongs things in other ways. But this allowed us to have slightly, I say slightly more mental capacity, because you don't really have full mental capacity for quite a while after someone passed away.
Mm. Mhm.
But it just, that brain fog, right? It, yeah, just allowed us a bit more time to get thinking about how we would honor her and how we
Mhm.
wanted to really celebrate her based on the things that she said that she wanted as well. Because I think it is not just about the person that's dying, and when you're having those conversations and thinking about what you want in terms of a funeral or end of life, it is also about the people that you're leaving behind as well. And
For sure.
that's
Yeah.
why I said I'm not sure whether that, when she said go off and dance, if that was something that she truly wanted, or if she thought that's something that I think you girls and all my friends would enjoy just as much. And they did, to be fair.
Mhm.
And it was after that that I had lots of people come up to me and say, that was brilliant for a funeral. I had a really good
Mhm.
time, which you wouldn't often hear people say. And they said, I didn't know this was like a possibility. I'd love something like this for myself. And that just planted a real seed in me. um, Not at first thinking about setting up a business, but how do you get people to think differently about it? There's no reason why you can't do anything. And I
Right.
think I was definitely someone who, before I experienced any loss, I thought it was almost like a funeral was a legal requirement, and you had to do it that way. And that was just, it was like a tick box that you had to do, right? You had to go and register the death, and then you had to do this, and then you had to do that. That's what I thought. And it's just so not the case. There's just so many possibilities. And I
Yeah.
liken it to a wedding, which some people are like,
Yes.
oh, how can you, that's weird. But I think it's, there's no limitations other than you legally have to register that wedding, you legally have to register that death, and you do have to um you have to deal with the final disposition appropriately, of course, and legally. But otherwise, do whatever you want.
Yeah. I think that's a lovely story. I love the background of it as well. It's I mean a lot of similarities to where like kind of why I got into this and yeah, my mom wanted a lot of alternative things that I didn't know were legal. I didn't know you could same to what you said. Like I was like, what do you mean? Like we have to do it this way that they always do it. You can't do
Yeah.
it that way. And then I realized like you actually like you said can do whatever you want. Like it's just and I
Yeah.
when I started my business and I was creating my website, um, I think I left some of this content on there, but originally I had as like the first paragraph was like, you know, you think about planning a wedding, you think about planning, like you hire a wedding planner, you hire a travel agency to plan a trip, but like I guess you hire a funeral director to do that, but you don't really think of it as a celebration in a way. It's like very
Mm.
somber and sad. Um, and
And
my
their
mom also,
packages as well. And I think,
yeah.
and that's what I, when I explain what Life and Soul does, it's hard to explain because you can go on my website and you can see I've tried to like present costs because I'm someone who very much, if I go on a website, I like to see costs up front. But
Mhm.
every single event is bespoke because every person is completely different. And so funeral directors are absolutely great what they do, but that's, you go in and you select the package that you want, you select the way you want um the cremation or the burial or whatever it is. And definitely they've gotten better at offering more personalization, but there's still quite a bit of red tape and you're still
Mhm.
restricted by whatever funeral director you've chosen and picked. And I think even choosing a funeral director is, sometimes people don't realize it's a really big purchase at the end of the
Mhm.
day. When you think about the money that you're parting with, it's really
Mhm.
expensive. And for any big purchase that I make, I'm shopping around, comparing, I'm making sure that what I'm
Yeah.
buying, the services that I'm using align with who I am as a person. And that's not the case because you just think, right, okay, they'll use the co-op down the right round the corner, which is like a big brand that kind of dominate a lot of the funeral market here. And you think that that'll do, and that's such a shame. That'll do when you think about it's like the last thing that you're going to do for someone. You want it to be, that was amazing. That was
Yeah.
them. That was awesome.
Yeah, I think the that was them part is what's lacking a lot of the times from the funeral industry is just we like yes, you're going there, you're grieving, you're sad, it's a loss. Like of course that exists, but I think that there's so much more opportunity as far as celebrating their life and representing however that is in a way that is how they are and how they
Mm,
were.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think it's super cool what you're doing. Some more detailed questions around kind of what you said, just to make sure that people understand. So, would would somebody hire you? Let's say, like my mom died. Would I work with a funeral director and you? Is that a possibility, or is it one or the other?
Yeah, it's yeah, we're separate. So I am an event planner. That is my background. I have over 10 years experience in event and project management. So that is definitely my forte. I think my typical client, if you like, is someone that does want to opt for a direct cremation and then want to
Okay.
do a memorial at a later date. And direct cremations have become really popular, and it's normally for one of two reasons, and that is because, one, the cost of living crisis, so it's the most affordable send off, but also because people want to do that bit and keep that separate. Because
Mhm.
I think, as you kind of just said then, like that's really sad. That's the last time you're going to be near your person. Um, and I think people are seeing the benefit in that in terms of like their grieving journey and keeping that
Mhm.
separate. And
Mhm.
so I help facilitate. I've got connections with funeral directors in my local area, so recommending people who to go to, who people who I trust. I, that's something that I do, but keeping that separate, I
Okay.
do find important.
And do you find or do you recommend that people, what if they do the direct cremation, do they usually do a memorial with you kind of soon after, or is it better to wait a bit longer like you did with your mom?
I think wait, I would always recommend. Um, it's changing the way people think though, because there is this, right, once I've done the funeral, then I can move on with my life. And I
Mhm.
think you will also probably be able to attest to the fact that actually
That's not
you
how it works.
can't. I had such a challenging time. It was like the year anniversary after my mum passed away, and I just really struggled with that milestone. And I think even when you're working in like if you have a corporate job, there's that expectation that
Hmm.
okay, well you've had your time off, which happens immediately, and now you've come back to work, and now we're in a new year, so your problems should be over, and they're just
Hmm.
so not. So I think having a bit more mental capacity to really think about what you want,
Hmm.
being able to have conversations with your family members and friends as well, that takes a bit of time, getting everyone on the same page, agreeing on a date people want to attend, um, and yeah, I think there's something um, I think there's something lovely in that, and it sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I think ultimately what I'm saying is yes, it's better
Wait a
to leave
bit.
a bit of time
Yeah.
so you can truly organise something that is reflective of that person, and you're doing yourself a justice just as much as that person as well, knowing that you've given them the best send off.
Yeah, for sure. I think I also often tell my clients when somebody first passes, you're kind of in this like really big adjustment, heavy grief, a bit of shock usually.
Mm.
And I try to advise them to not make any rash decisions during that time. Like, for example, I see sometimes if you lose somebody, like maybe the husband of the wife who passed wants to get rid of all her stuff and like clean the house out and kind of like clear it
Mm.
out so they can have a fresh space. But then you have kids that might say, like, I don't want to get rid of mom's stuff yet. I want to keep it. Um, so yeah, I'm always trying to recommend to people like just try not to like throw everything away right away.
Yeah.
Like put it in the basement maybe and like leave it out of the space for a bit because you might change your mind down the road and like actually appreciate having some of that stuff there.
Mm.
So I think that that's a really good point as far as planning a memorial because you don't want to like rush into making last minute decisions, especially where I think I know one of our topics here is kind of like how do we help people to start talking about end of life planning earlier and like when they're still alive. And I think that doesn't happen enough. And so sometimes
Mm.
somebody dies and then you have to make all these decisions in a really short period of time and you don't have a lot of time to reflect. So yeah, I really like the idea of just
Waiting. Yeah.
wait, let things settle a bit, reflect, think about what's
Yeah.
important.
I do understand the element of okay, right, well once I've got that done in the way, then I can move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess it only comes with experience of those things and being able to say, "Oh, I wish I'd waited a bit longer," but it's in the moment, right? You have to deal with it
Hmm.
however you're feeling and whatever you can manage in that moment.
Yeah. And like you said, I think society puts a lot of pressure and expectation that okay, you've had your couple of weeks off to grieve and now it's time to come back to work and everything should be normal now as if the
Yeah.
first year is like everything's new. It's the first time experiencing everything without that person
Mm.
and
I did a
yeah.
bit of therapy around that year milestone that I was talking about, and she said my a therapist said to me, "Do you know the Victorians used to grieve for a whole year?" And I
Mm,
was like, "Wow, that actually makes a lot of sense to me as
it
I hit
does.
that year milestone." There, so traditional funerals are generally on the decline because our society is becoming more secular. So there's not as much of a need for the traditional formats of a church service. Again, I don't know how it is in the US, but you have the option to, if you're part of a religion, you would have perhaps service at the church just the same as you would for a wedding. But again, like a wedding, over the last sort of 50 years, we've seen weddings completely step away from churches and
Hmm.
moving into just standard venues. And that's very much the same for funerals as well. So people would go to the perhaps local crematorium, or there's private funeral places and crematoriums now, and then move the wake to a separate location, and again at a later date. So largely because society is becoming more secular. Also, there is more choice now. I personally would still like to see more choice. I
Hmm.
don't think there's anything wrong with that. But definitely as I sort of said a bit earlier, just in the last 10 years, going from just having a burial and cremation to different kinds of cremations, and also different kinds of burials as well. So you have natural burial grounds, seeing more and more of those pop up. But that
Hmm.
is seen as something quite premium now,
Hmm.
whereas cremation's more affordable. And then just to touch on living funerals, I actually read about living funerals becoming more popular in the States first.
Hmm.
And I thought it was a really interesting concept. And then there was a lady whose name I can't remember, but she ran a charity in the UK called Copperfield. Um, so I believe she was diagnosed with cancer years before, and she survived. She set up this amazing charity, and Copperfield was all about checking your breasts, and it really, really did help. It really did get people checking their breasts and not being shy about it. So she did an awesome job there, but unfortunately, the cancer came back, and she did pass away the second time she had it. But she had a living funeral,
Hmm.
and it looked epic, and there was quite a lot of press about it because of all of her previous charity work. And I just thought that is awesome. And then the more digging I did, the more I saw that it is becoming quite popular because, and I imagine it's because what a perfect opportunity to have all your loved ones in one space, not necessarily just to be a party. It could be, for example, so one of the ideas that when I'm trying to explain what the possibilities could be is a film evening where you gather all your loved ones in one space and you share some words about your life and you get other people to do the same, and then you together watch your favorite film, and you just will have that moment and that memory to hold on to, and you get to be there as well. And when people
Hmm.
look back and think about it, they think, what a great final way to be together and honor your life, and just all in one place.
Hmm. I think like when you think about it, it makes more sense, honestly, that you would have all your people there. Like you think about like you people talk about, if you're on death row in a prison, like what's your last meal going to be? And I think that's like a normal question to ask, like, oh, what would your last meal be? And you think about what kind of food you would eat, but nobody's like, who would you want all around you? I mean,
Yeah.
usually I guess it's probably your spouse and maybe your kids, but yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I was married and got divorced now, but I remember the day of my wedding thinking how it was just so, I don't know if magical is the right word, but just like so lovely to have every person that I cared about in the world there in one
Mm.
place. Not even that we were celebrating me, but just the fact that everybody was there. Like I got to see everyone that I liked. And I was like, this is never going to happen again.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then people say, yeah, your wedding and your funeral, but then you're not there for your funeral. So why
Yeah.
not be there for that?
It's such a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. And to hear all the nice things. I mean, people share things at funerals about you and how, like, what you meant to them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that would be nice to hear, as you're ending your life.
Some people I could totally get, they don't like that. My grandpa was a no nonsense, no fuss. I remember taking him to the hospital, and it was not long after Dad had passed away. And I knew that he hadn't been well, but we didn't know that it was serious until I took him to this appointment and they used the C word. And I just completely broke down, and he was like, get off, like, come on, let's go home. And if you tried to have a conversation with him about, I love you and you've meant so much to me, he just didn't want to hear it. But
Yeah.
me personally, and maybe I'm a bit egotistical, yeah, I do want to hear those things. I do want to
Yeah.
know that I meant something to all these people because they mean something to me,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think I want to lap those last moments up and hear those things and know that what I think about my life is reflective in the people around me.
Yeah, for sure. And even as you said, like, I had never thought, oh, having a movie night, that sounds really nice. But for people who maybe are more not wanting the public attention from everyone standing up and sharing out loud, like you could have everyone write in a letter and then you read
Yeah,
them later in private. Like there's just, as you said, so many different things that you can
yeah.
do. And we just haven't, I feel like, allowed ourselves to really like think outside the box and what that would mean to
Mm.
us and what we could do.
And that's kind of what I say about my service. I think people would consider it a premium service, and I think that's fair because just like I consider a wedding planner to be a premium service because for me, I feel very capable of organizing an event. So I know that I have that in me, but for some people they don't, and it's not just the organization side of things; it's also the creativity, which is definitely something. It's the thing that I love most about what I do is
Mm,
having the opportunity just as a celebrant would sit down with someone and get to know say a couple and then they write they don't call it a eulogy at a wedding, do they?
like
That's
vows, maybe.
that's it.
No,
You
definitely
do
not a
your eulogy
eulogy.
at your wedding. um, but they get to spend the time with the couple. They get to write their story, and then they get to share it with everyone at the wedding.
Hmm.
And I kind of take that same approach. I want to know the core of that person. I want to tell their story, not even just in an event format. Something we did for when I knew Mum was terminally ill. I sat down with her and recorded Desert Island Disc, which is a popular radio program in the UK,
Mm,
and it's been running for plus 50 years. It's a long, long time, and they have not just celebrities on, like actors, musicians. They have people who have contributed enormously to their field, whether it's the prison service or hospital, whatever it is. They have these really interesting, amazing people on, and they get them to select 8 tracks that they would
mm,
want to take to a desert island disc, and it kind of is a little bit of telling their story through music.
mhm,
We've always loved the program. Mum's listened to it for years, and then we started to listen to it as we got a bit older and sort of saw the value in it a bit more. I think when you're younger and you hear things like that in the background, you're like, oh, Mum's listening to the radio, and I want to listen to the top 40. So I recorded hers, and I got a friend to edit it exactly the same as they would on the program, and then I gifted that to my sisters after she'd passed away. So
mm,
it was a capsule of her voice. We laugh in it, we cry in it. It's her music choices. She loved music. She loved going to see live music and to festivals, and she had a lot of energy. Um, and that was things like that I think are equally important. So it's not just doesn't just have to be a big all singing, all dancing event. It can be something really intimate, or it could be something you can package up because that's the way you want to commemorate them.
mhm. I know we mentioned a couple of some of the kind of different creative ideas for celebrating life around like maybe the movie idea or the CD music thing that you did with your mom, but what other things come to mind or like how do you help people kind of creatively think about what they want to do?
It's just as I sort of mentioned earlier, a similar approach to a celebrant, where you get to know the core of that person, their values, their interests, um, the people around them are also a really important part of that as well. You can get a really good
Mhm.
idea of someone just from hearing someone else talk about them. And then thinking about how that would translate in a room, and not just for perhaps a small group of people, but a large group of people as well. Um, so yeah, I've touched on the film idea. I think you kind of mentioned, like, even if you didn't want to get up and hear everyone's speeches, writing down those letters. I haven't had the opportunity yet, but love the idea of having all of these letters written about someone, but in like a gallery setup, so people
Mm.
could take the time to go around and read all these lovely anecdotes. Also thought about how that could also be done digitally as well. So there's a letter trail online as well. However that would look, I think the online stuff is just as important. Um, there's a couple of ideas that I've had, and again, not had the opportunity to do yet, but a candle ceremony where you can be anywhere in the world, and you all collectively decide to light a candle at the same time for that
Mm.
person. So, especially if you can't go to the funeral, if you think about COVID times, something ceremonial, I think, is also lovely. Not just the commemorating someone based on their interests and their likes, but yeah, the ceremony of it, I think, is. I know it can almost be, yeah, it's a ritual, but then I think a lot of these events and things, like a wedding, it's a ceremony, it's a ritual that you're doing. My mum's, I always think, is a great one. So yeah, she told us to go off and dance, but we also we didn't want it to just feel like a party.
Mhm.
So we did take some time at the beginning of the evening where people had speeches. I also had some videos made as well of mum at gigs and festivals. So it was almost like she was dancing with us,
Mhm.
which was really nice. We had her favourite cocktails, and she was a big fan of tequila. Her drink was tequila on the rocks. She's
Love
actually
this.
more hardcore than me because I cannot. I can't even do a shot. Although I did on this occasion because it was important. So we did a big
Yeah.
cheers. We got everyone a tequila shot, and once we were done with the speeches, we had our shot, and then we really did dance the night away. We wore bright colours and leopard print. That was her thing too, wearing a lot of leopard print. So just as soon as people came into the space, they immediately were like, "Oh my god, this is your mum!" And then at the
Mhm.
end of the night, they were like, "That was perfect. That was your mum." And that is ultimately that feeling is what I'm always trying to capture for the
Mhm.
memorials.
Wow, amazing. I love that. Um, are you often, are your clients often talking to you as a pre-planning thing, or is it usually after
No,
they've passed that people reach out?
after they've passed, and so I would say that at this stage, because I haven't been doing this very long, um, it's people who don't know what they want. And I think that's a real shame. And whether it's just an unfortunate timing thing, and they've been a bit younger and they just, I mean, my dad was 59 when he passed away, which I do think is really young. But I
Mhm.
also do think maybe at 59, he didn't have a will,
Mm.
and the only thing that we knew that he wanted was to be buried, because he, by his own admission, had an irrational fear of cremations and being burnt alive, which I
Like, Dad, we checked, you were
yeah.
dead.
Yeah. But so that came from when his dad died and they were organising his funeral, and they'd planned for the cremation, and then apparently a few days before he was like, I can't do it. I can't
Mhm.
I can't send him into the furnace. And so he changed it all and he had him buried. And so that's the only thing we could honor because we had no idea what it was that he wanted.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I still think there's a lot of work. Ultimately, what I'm saying, there's still a long way to go where people feel comfortable being vocal about saying this is what I want. And I think it's also fine to say I don't know what I want. Do something that feels right for you, and giving the family permission because
Yes.
it is so stressful, the admin around that time anyway, and knowledge is key, right? So just having a will alone is really helpful. Knowing where all the finance stuff is, making sure everything's accountable for. I
Hmm.
found 3 years ago some unclaimed shares from my dad that my mum had not done anything with.
Mm.
And there were so many stones I wonder or I worry that we've left unturned because we just don't know. And
Hmm.
it's just the same feeling when it comes to planning a funeral. It's you want to feel like you've done right by them and you've made the right decisions. And if you don't know what they want, that's really tough. And if the person doesn't know what they want, that's fine. Just give them permission to do what feels right. I
Yeah,
think
I have made
powerful.
several videos on this because I'm always encouraging people to start documenting and sharing what it is that they want around everything end of life related. And I get a lot of people who are like, well, why would I do that? Like, I don't really care. I'm going to be dead. Like, who cares? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I understand that. That's fine. But tell that to the people so that they know you don't care. And then they're not trying to figure out, like, what would he have wanted? And they can just do what they want. Like, that in itself is just probably the easiest outcome.
Yeah.
Um,
And a pretty short conversation if it's because the conversation alone makes people feel uncomfortable and
yeah,
um, that could be over pretty quickly if you just hand over complete control to somebody else.
exactly.
Um,
Um, I know that a lot of my followers and most of who I'm working with are usually in the US. My hope is to, like, once I get settled here a bit more, can move things over. But um, if people are interested in working with you, maybe you won't be able to, like, actually plan things for them specifically in the US, but is there an area where you can sit down and talk with them and talk about different options?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
do. I was talking to an online cremation provider at the end of last year, just seeing how we could possibly work together. Because the guy that I was speaking to is one of the co-owners, and he was going back through and just doing checking over calls, just seeing what life's like for his customer service team, and he noticed that a lot of people were asking about celebrations of life, and that wasn't something that they offered, and they really thought about, well, how can we offer our customers that? That would be great to add
Hmm.
add value. Um, and so I was thinking about how we could work together and how I could package that up. And one of the things that I came up with is, yeah, just providing the ideas. So
Hmm.
getting to know the person virtually, and then sending over a bit how I've always worked in the events world. I get a brief, and
Hmm.
then we come up with concepts and then we send them back. So
Hmm.
yes, I'm totally always up for that, and it's honestly one of the things I love most. Always
Yeah.
coming up with ideas. I
Yeah, and I would imagine, like, that's sometimes probably the hardest part is just, like, brainstorming in a way with somebody to can help you kind of, like, provide different questions and scenarios to
Yeah,
think about, and then, yeah, having a brief that's like, okay, so I need to find a space that holds about 200 people. I really want music, so I should find a DJ. Like, that gives you a checklist of all the things you need to do, which you
yeah,
can then do on your own. Okay,
yeah,
that's good to know.
exactly. People are very capable, and I know that, and I so therefore I know that. As I sort of mentioned before, this isn't a service for everybody, but it's just either a helping hand and doing the heavy lifting when you mentally and physically can't. And then it's also bringing the ideas that maybe, again, you don't have the mental capacity before, or perhaps you're just not that way inclined and you struggle a
Hmm.
bit in that area. And so, um, yeah, it's a helpful service. And one thing that I do is I make sure that all the costs are transparent as well. So if it's a purchase, it's just at cost. There is no inflation in any way. And then the work that I put in is for my time. That's it.
Hmm. Okay, that's what I was gonna. That was my last question that I had was if you're comfortable sharing like what people should expect to pay if they're gonna work with you.
Yeah, the transparency thing is really important to me as someone who has worked in events and done many a budgets and added 20% to every line item. And it's just not the time to be
Yeah.
adding that sort. I just truly believe that it needs to be transparent. The only thing that is always hard when you're providing a service, and I'm sure you feel the same, is quantifying your time
Hmm.
and what value that is and what people put value on
Hmm.
as well, varies.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's always tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just having these conversations about the industry and changing people's mindset as well. I think what you're doing is really awesome. I know I said at
Thank
the
you.
beginning, but it's really great.
I appreciate it. You
Yeah.
too.